Hi, I'm Oded Hareven, the CEO and co-founder of Akeyless. Join us for a fireside chat with Admiral Mike Rogers, the former NSA director, to talk about machine identities and how to solve the future challenges of tomorrow. Mike, how are you?
Oh, it's great, man.
All right.
To be with you, it's a great day.
A pleasure to be together, and thank you for joining us in this.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. So, Mike, let's start just by, obviously telling our audience. I'm sure that most of them know
Who is this Mike Rogers?
Who is this Mike Rogers? And again, I'm sure that they know you, but just for the ones who do not.
So, hey, look, I did 37 years in the United States Navy. I retired as a four-star admiral. In my last 4+ years as a four-star admiral, I was the director of the National Security Agency and the commander of the United States Cyber Brigade. What does that mean? Simplistically, number one, I was part of a great group of men and women. I led the two largest cyber organizations of the U.S. government, which means effectively they're among the two largest cyber organizations in the world, just given that the scale that the United States operates at. And in those two organizations, we were tasked with generating deep knowledge and understanding about who are the cyber actors out there, nation states, criminals, individuals. What are they doing? What's their objective? How are they doing it? How can we defeat them? In addition, spent a lot of time because NSA develops all the encryption from the algorithms to the actual key material for all the classified systems in the U.S. government. Finally, the last two areas, defended and penetrated networks for a living. So I worked the offense and the defense. Cyber Command was responsible for the defense of the Department of Defense network. So a lot of users, a lot of network structure. And then we also were at Cyber Command responsible, if you will, for supporting the defense of our critical infrastructure in the United States. So working with banks, power companies, energy companies, et cetera, as to how we were going to help defend their infrastructure against, attacks from nation states and criminal groups.
And I'm sure lots of, thoughts around private and public sector.
Very much so.
How can you help to the private sector, and how much would be that involvement, right? Very much.
Whose role, who should do what?
Yeah.
What was the right role, which I really enjoy. I love the fact that cyber was all about, if we're going to achieve enhanced cybersecurity, how do we work together as a team? How do we bring together the best of the private sector, the best in government?
Sure.
And how do we figure out, hey, what's the right role that each should have and how we can team together? I really enjoy that part of it.
Well, that's great. I'm very happy for you also. Mike, when you look back and with your, this great amount of years dealing with cybersecurity and technology and securing the nation, obviously, all around the globe, what are the challenges that, when you think back, what were the major challenges and also the trends that you've seen back then?
First thing I was struck by was, number one, leadership is so important. Look, this is about how do you identify, train, recruit, retain, and motivate and focus humans.
Yeah.
As important as technology is, men and women who make the difference.
Yeah, the man in the tank is the one who wins, right?
So that was a big one. Never was about people. Number two, one thing I was always struck by, I used to have this conversation with vendors all the time when they would approach us about, hey, we think you ought to buy this capability, that capability, given your defense mission.
Yeah.
In terms of cybersecurity. And one of the things I used to tell them was, guys, you have got to give us integrated solutions. I cannot keep proliferating in the name of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
More and more apps, more and more systems, more and more software that our cybersecurity workforce has to try to train on, understand, and maximize the value of. I need integrated solutions at scale. Because I need speed, I need scale, and I need to simplify my human dimension here. I want to make things easier for them. I don't make it easier if I keep giving them, hey, here's 10 more tools this week that you need to learn. That it just doesn't get us where we need to be.
Yeah, but although you could have imagined that it had sense for some period of time in which the challenges have presented themselves more and more, because everything was new, going back, even, for me to look back 20 years back in the Israeli Defense Forces, those challenges, most of them were new, right? What do you do with your encryption keys? How do you protect them? You just need a system to do that. What do you do with your certificates? You need a different system to do that. And it evolves, and it's all around cybersecurity. Today, we're having some, 5,000 different vendors in the cybersecurity, and I'm sure that if someone would count, they would find even much more.
Probably more.
Probably more, and startups, every day that come.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned one is the human factor, which is how to make them obviously operate and effective in a large scale, of course.
Enhance and increase that.
Yeah. And on the other hand, the tools that you were using, right? The tools the software, the hardware, whatever, what was it, the vendors were actually and you've mentioned a demand for them to provide you tools that are more integrated in that sense. Could you share maybe within, with your experience, something about this kind of challenge, maybe a particular with the name of the numbers of those systems, and maybe we can have like an example if you remember.
So I'll give you examples from two perspectives. Number one, what did the challenge look like when I was trying to penetrate a target system versus what was the problem look like when I was trying to defend? So as an attacker, I can remember talking to the team about, look, the advantage in some ways we have going for us is we can compromise from a human side, from a hardware side, from a software side. You get a lot of options, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it enables you to look at attack surface much more broadly. So we might be, I won't go into any specifics given the classification, but we would look at a target. And first we'd ask ourselves, okay, what human has access within this network structure that if you will, compromise their identity, we can use it to gain the access. The next thing we'd ask ourselves, okay, if the human dimension is proving to be a little challenging, what hardware could we assume the identity of to gain that access? Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, we'd ask ourselves, okay, if we can't look at this from a human or a hardware perspective, what other partners do they have out there that they've given remote access to, that if we go after them, but we can use that remote access to tunnel it? As a defender, the thing that I kept trying to understand was our attack surface keeps proliferating. We're growing it. We're increasing it. It's counterintuitive in some ways. If you knew, hey, look, if you made your system smaller, if you locked it down, if you significantly restricted remote accessibility, for example, hey, you'd probably increase your probability of successful cybersecurity. But on the other hand, you'd also be saying to yourselves, yeah, but we wouldn't be achieving the outcomes of the organization.
Yeah.
We need scale. We need remote access. We need remote control. We need, to look at both IT and OT. The trend, interestingly to me, despite all of the challenges we're having in cybersecurity, the trend is we are doubling down on fundamentally difficult to defend model. We're increasing attack surface. We're adding more devices.
And more technology.
And more remote.
Yeah.
More software, more programs. I'm struck by, we're really increasing from a defender's perspective. Complexity keeps growing. And I think it goes to something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Look, I need vendors who help me simplify. I got enough complexity, if you will, in the nature of the network structure I'm trying to defend. I don't think that's going to change. So, hey, you've got to help me simplify how we look at this from a cybersecurity perspective. So I loved integrated solutions that gave me a one-stop shop to the problem set I was looking at.
You've mentioned two challenges, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe we can add another challenge, or if you'd like to tackle that in a different...
Come on, more challenges the better.
More challenges, right?
That's the way our CISOs and cybersecurity professionals...
Right.
That's the world they're dealing.
So to summarize, you said the human aspect of making them effective, right? And to make them effective within the goals where you want to reach. The other one was proliferation of tools, because you had a lot of different tools and vendors, and you've asked for more integrated solutions. What were the other or more challenges that you remember that you've had back then? And maybe you'll start with the third or something so we can edit that later on.
So if you look at a third challenge, I just found, how do you achieve cybersecurity excellence at a greater and greater scale? What we're trying to defend is growing. It's not getting smaller, it's getting larger.
Yeah.
And so I kept trying to figure out, how do I keep growing my ability to do this at scale? Because I don't think things are going to get smaller. I don't think things are going to get less complicated. So the third area that I kind of highlight is, how increasingly do you do this at scale? And then the fourth component I would highlight, how also do you do it in a world of high rates of change? Mm-hmm. It's not static. So you're trying to defend a network structure, if you will.
Yeah.
In which change is a constant. It's not something that happens infrequently. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you're saying to yourself, oh, I don't have to worry about it. You constantly are changing configuration. You constantly are changing hardware, software. And the funny thing is, one of the weaknesses we found over time clearly was, it seemed to be once we granted access based on identity, we didn't pay any further attention. That was it. So you would watch how many machines, how many individuals over time who physically didn't exist anymore, whether it was virtual and you took it offline, whether it was an employee who wasn't with you anymore, a user who wasn't with you anymore. But we would constantly grant identity access, never take it away. And you'd see the same thing with credentials, where we would grant people, in some cases, a high level of credential. They leave, they change jobs. We didn't change the level of access we had granted them. I thought, so how can we be more fluid? How can we be more aware in a real-time basis of what is going on?
Sure. And obviously this challenge is becoming significantly bigger when we are experiencing, right? We are experiencing a great rise in the numbers of those machines, those containers and those clusters and servers. And
by orders of magnitude. I mean, I've heard you quote some figures that highlight, look, this is orders of magnitude. And it's every year.
Yeah, it's every year. Just in 2023, we've heard of a rise of 240% in the number of digital identities in the world. While you look at the population, that was not as a result of humans, right? The ratio between machines and humans today is accepted to be around 45x machine per human. So imagine an enterprise with 10,000 employees, almost 500,000 machines. Right. I remember back being in the IDF, we've had a data center or several of those. You could have counted the number of machines in front of you, although it would have taken you an hour, but it was an infinite number, right? And today it became impossible. Today we're talking about stacks that are, thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of those machines, and each and every one of them have an identity, which brings us now to a world.
Can I make one thing before I forget?
Of course.
You highlight something really interesting.
Yeah.
We are increasing our identity problem or challenge. At the same time, we have built a cyber operational structure that's predicated on the idea, well, I have high confidence in identity.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought to myself, so we assume that we have high knowledge, we're increasing the complexity of the problem. What if we have this wrong and we really don't have the level of knowledge of identity that we think we do? I always thought that was one of my biggest problems.
I think we're unfortunately entering this kind of era in which identity, especially again when you speak about machines, because the world have proven that you can, in several ways, you can somehow manipulate the human identity, right? You can with social engineering and many other aspects. But with machines, actually, you don't have to do social engineering. You actually get into the network and you're finding those objects that are used in order to authorize those identity, right? To authenticate them. Those are the secrets, right? The passwords, the credentials, the certificate.
It's not by chance that if you just look at the techniques that hackers are using right now, the single greatest technique is theft of credentials, the ability to assume an identity.
The most number one used attack vector, according to the latest Verizon report, 83% of attack vectors are basically, or breaches, or leveraging those credential certificates and keys, either stealing them, manipulating them, or whatever, basically using the ones that are not changing.
And I don't think that threat vector is going to change anytime soon. When you are able to achieve an 83% success rate, you're not inclined to change what you're doing.
Well, it's concerning also not just because of the rise of the cloud and the number of machines that are just getting higher and higher, getting other aspects like AI, which in general, the compute power in the world is rising, okay? Which I think it's now, today, we're all confident to assume that the human factor, as much as it was important previously, the future, the present time and the future is now about, let's focus our solutions on machines. And how do we secure those machines' identities?
Yeah. Although, just remember, it's not a binary one or the other.
It's never a binary.
As we're working with the human dynamic, we can't ever forget that we're not growing a lot of new people. Massive amount, far exceeding. So it shows you that the challenge is growing greatest in particular area, even as we're paying attention to the human dynamic here from an identity perspective. The challenge that keeps growing the most is the machine side here.
Yeah. So when you take all of that into account, right, we talked about scale. We talked about the rise of machines. We talked about the importance of identity, right? Because you've mentioned things like we thought that we can maybe lie on or to trust the identity and to say, you know what, at least we got something figured in the equation. Yeah. But actually we're not, okay? And that's the main problem. So when you take that into account and taking all the tools that has all together, so here lies a phenomena in front of us, okay, in which a lot of tools, right, with a big question around efficiency, a major increase in the number of machines and the challenges to prove the identity. And it seems like we're going in a way that we should wake up right now.
I think you're right. My challenge would be, if we keep doing the model that we're doing now, it's not going to get us where we need to be. Just given the kind of challenge and this deal we talked about, that argues to me, we got to think about this challenge a little differently. We got to approach it from a much more integrated way. You know, these stovepipe solutions that historically we've used to throw a problem, they're just not scalable. They don't give you scale, they don't give you speed, and they complicate your cybersecurity as a defender. They complicate your life. They will make it easier. And as I said, look, I constantly would say to the vendor, I need to reduce complexity. I need to increase my ability to operate at scale. I need to increase my ability to operate at speed. And help me in a way in which I can actually get ahead of the adversary. I can anticipate what they're doing, not reacting after they've already.
Absolutely. So we've looked at that in obviously the past few years and those trends that are happening. Our first understanding is that we need to first focus on an object that unifies all of those use cases, and to be able to unify or to basically understand the generic part of it in order for us to provide a true platform. And that was the terminology around secret, right? What could have been named as credentials is not just about credentials. Credentials is also like certificates, which is a different term. But then actually when you put terminology, an umbrella terminology, calling that secret, you find out that you can generalize it. You can also generalize the whole life cycle of encryption key, right? All of those different objects that I'm naming right now, credential, database credential, API key, SSH key, certificate, encryption keys, all of those all together, when you look at it, those are the secrets that authenticate identities. Either they're signing, either they're encrypting it, either whatever they are doing. But at the end of the day, they are validating an identity and approves an access to certain data. Now, when you look at that aspect in a generalized way, you are able to eventually, and that was at the beginning, eventually to unify all of those different use cases. But then was a question around how can we protect all of those different objects and calling it in a generic way. And that brought us with the DFC. The Akeyless DFC, and I'm sure that we talked about that. It started as an encryption keys management system, right? To make encryption as a service very easy way and to protect the key with an Akeyless way, right? Without a key. So that fragments of encryption keys are being created as fragments, never combined while we're running the encryption. And when you look at it, that technology allowed us to unify all of those different use cases.
While giving you enhanced security, which is
while giving
always trying to do.
Exactly what we call today proactive security, a proactive security approach to protect different types of those secrets. Each and every type of those secrets that I've mentioned need to be created, they need to be versioned, they need to be rotated, they need to be sometimes just in time created, it depends, and eventually they need to be deleted, right? So the life
you need to be aware of them.
Oh, of course.
To be aware.
The awareness part and the discovery part is also a crucial part within it, in which obviously we'll see more and more within our platform to grow. But going back to all of those different types, what we understood back is that we want to look at the world of machine identity in the eyes of how do you protect that kind of object that identifies it, right? So that provides us the beginning, back then the secrets management, and then we continued to add more and more because we've met exactly what you said. You've mentioned that vendors and professionals have basically told you need to use this part in order to secure that part. You need to use this protocol or this component. So when we went out with secrets management, that was 4 years back, customers have started to ask us, can you do this? Can you do that? Because that's a secret for us.
That's good, but what about this?
Yeah, what about that? So luckily and happily, we've had 2 things, or 3 things that have worked for us very well. Number one, we've had the great people that we can work with and to analyze.
Always the foundation.
Always the foundation, right? You build on the team. That's number one. Number two, the technology. Our DFC was built in order to unify all of those use cases. So for us, relatively speaking, it was obviously, almost obvious for us to look at it and to say, oh yeah, we can do those use cases as well. And then the third aspect was actually lucky for us to have a quite new technology to absorb, right? We started 4 years back, so all the microservices, the cloud, the languages, the Golang, all the other technology they have basically been there in order to facilitate what we call the big bang of machine identity management. Because again, siloed solutions that we've had back then, customers that have asked, you know what, you can do that, and that provided us the ability to start part by part, piece by piece, to take the same platform and to add those capabilities without stitches.
So you're getting to that integrated solution.
Exactly.
That scale.
Exactly. Right. Now, the integration of those did not happen as of stitching. We did not buy, all right? We did not buy any technology. We did not buy other companies. We organically grown that using our technology, right, that have been suitable and the right time, right, to add more and more of those functionalities to create this integrated, or what we call today, the unified secrets and machine identity management. And obviously, we claim for that to be the first in the world of being that unified for all of those use cases. So, in a way, if we could have taken, shuttle to the past, if I was there, 10 years back, while you were there and telling you, hey, Mike, we have an integrated solution for you to deal with this increasing problem that you have.
I could have said at last, someone who comes to me with an integrated solution.
Yeah, exactly, to facilitate the speed that is needed, etc.
So we've been talking about how we see the problem.
Yeah.
And the challenge that this presents. So if we want to, how would you answer the question then, what should we be doing differently and where is this going? How do you think, what is identity moving itself towards?
Sure. So, well, as you can imagine, the identity aspect of humans had got a lot of effort and attention in the industry, right? Humans got their SSO solutions, MFAs. Today, you're face IDing your own iPhone, right? And it recognizes you, it identifies you. And generally speaking, it looks like we're doing a much better job with the human factor. With machines, they don't have MFA. Machines don't have a face that you can recognize. And hence, there is a question of, what do you do with the static approach of those credentials, certificates, and keys where eventually someone finds it, right? And the future needs to provide an answer to that, especially in a highly dynamic environment and the scale that keep growing. So the third aspect is, how do you make sure that those credentials in this significant scale, how you can find it? So the traditional approach was to vault them on a vault. And this is where Akeyless obviously provided the vaultless approach, meaning together with the DFC technology, with a key that never exists, to be able to protect those credentials as static as they are, but then needs to come up with the second layer of what we call the second notion for that sense, which is the ability to rotate them all the time, to keep them dynamic, to keep changing. But that's not all. After they're changing, that's fine, but at the end of the day, there is an identity. When you are rotating a password, eventually there is still an identity. There is still a system account in the database. There is still an account within the IAM of the cloud. So the third way to look at it in terms of evolution is the just-in-time credentials, or the just-in-time secrets, that are basically creating a temporary identity for machines. It makes a lot of logic. Today, machines are known to be ephemeral more than it used to be, right? Virtual machines, container microservices, the world is moving there. So to create just-in-time identity that is provided to the requester, and after a certain amount of time that it's being used, to completely be deleted. Imagine how well does it do for compliance and audit, right? They basically have a complete empty IAM system for a certain database, because when no one uses it, no one needs it, and it means a lot. It's not necessarily easy to change the architecture of your software to do so, but it's imperative. So that's the third layer. But as you've known us for some long time, and you know that it's not the end. We have more to come.
Oh, we have more ideas.
More ideas and more practicality, a more practical thing to enable the future. The fourth stage on that manner would be helping a lot of IT and security and DevOps engineers and SRE and platform engineers to move to the secretless world. And what does this mean? Basically, it means to support by the use of great protocols and authentication schemes that have been created to allow machines to authenticate without a physical object rather than an infrastructure object that is provided underneath. And with protocols such as OIDC and protocols like SPIF and Spire to basically to facilitate an identity provider such as Akeyless to provide temporary tokens. So it's kind of a just-in-time understanding. There is no identity on the other side. It keeps deleted also for temporary access for a certain machine to act. This fourth generation would help significantly for organizations to decrease the number of secrets down to the minimum. Now, the number of targets
I'm trying to defend
with time, think of it, us, Akeyless, as the secrets and machine identity, right, platform, we are literally advocating to help our customers to decrease the number of secrets. So you can learn from that in terms of, the business model is not about secrets.
Yeah.
We want to have and want to see our customers to decrease the number of secrets as much as possible. And yet this is a transition. It requires a transition from the current world that is very much reliant on those physical or virtual objects in order to bring them while changing applications to the world of secretless.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm curious about, and I don't know the answer, but I always try to look for examples and analogies as I'm trying to work my way through problems. This is one of the ways I tend to dissect complexity in the world around me. So even as we're looking towards that longer-term goal that we talked about, I'm struck by, so what have we done in the human arena? We've decided that while we still have a credential-based human dynamic, let's overlay a second component, oftentimes biometrics. Say, let's go to multi-factor authentication. And I'm wondering, what does multi-factor authentication or equivalent look like in the world of a machine when you're trying to add another characteristic, if you will, to help define identity? I don't know what that would be. I'm just curious out my own mind. Is there such a thing? Maybe there isn't. I don't know.
So there is a claim in the industry that you can somehow imitate the multi-factor authentication by having, some parameters within the CPU of a certain machine, or to see, well, we used to think that IP is a good thing. We now know that it's completely right. Everyone in the industry understands that neither IP or MAC address is not the answer. But there are all kind of properties, right, that can be used allegedly in order to create some kind of an attestation that cannot be hacked. Unfortunately, the recent years have shown that even hardware can be hacked and even a memory can be hacked while it's running, right? And it looks like
may have done that in a previous life.
So say no more on that end. So since you know that in your heart and you've seen it in your eyes, it looks like the only answer would be around running it in ephemeral mode, running the credentials or providing credentials for a short amount of time. Back in the days when we were all discussing zero trust, right? I remember a discussion that I've had with Dr. Zero Trust Chase Cunningham, our friend from those days. He was mentioning the just-in-time importance of identity as well. Most of the zero trust solutions were very much focused on the network area. So you're going to get a temporary access to the network to a specific place. But the identity layer for a long time has been left alone or has been left untouched in terms of how do you take that zero trust principles and making sure that the identity also answers. And this is exactly the just-in-time credentials providing just-in-time identity, just-in-time secret or dynamic secrets for that sense to enable this process and to basically have both network and the application layer, identity layer level, to be able to be provided for a just amount of time. So it's not necessarily, going back to your question, not necessarily into how you better prove an identity of a machine rather than providing it for a very short amount of time in order to make sure that it does not harm and you're able to revoke
it or a specific purpose.
Yeah, etc. Exactly as it is. Now, when you add, by the way, the aspect of Akeyless, the DFC, the fact that the key never exists, one of our point in which we're very proud of is that we're saying if you're leveraging the DFC in comparison to a natural KMS that it allows you to run encryption, if someone steals your data, your encrypted data, they need to steal also the encryption key. And when they do that, they can take the encryption key and they can go outside, and you would never know that they're opening your information. Just know that they stole it. You don't have the understanding, and you have much less time to acknowledge and understand and to find them. With the DFC approach, with a fragmented key, basically, that all fragments do not, know each other.
Or know each other.
The attacker, the adversary, need to be within your network in order to actually decrypt, because they require the algorithm action in order to decrypt the information. So you have much more time to identify your attacker, the ones that are just trying to grab your secrets, to sign certificates on your behalf, etc., etc. So that's one of the great benefits there. I'd like to add some more things before we wrap up. All right. So we talked about the unification. I wanna use this also to provide more specific names with regards to the thing that we are unifying. Okay. So maybe we'll start with a question about unification. Right. I've mentioned that the Akeyless is unifying secrets and machine identity platform. So how many tools are unifying? So let's try to be even more specific. Or how many tools? What are the tools here?
Let's take a minute and think about, as we think through, you've outlined in a vision that Akeyless wants to achieve, this idea of unification, about how we're going to bring protection of secrets with machine identity together in an integrated way. So what's your vision of how to achieve that unification?
Sure. So first of all, happily, we're definitely inside that vision, and the world can actually now enjoy it as is. There is some further roadmap into it, and I'll elaborate even further. But for the first time in the world, Akeyless presents a unification of several use cases around machine identity management, right? Secrets management is the base of it. Our DFC technology that provides the core around it. So it's KMS capabilities, encryption keys management, certificate lifecycle management, managing PKI, secure remote access as an answer for modern PAM, and password management. All of those all together, already within one unified platform. Today, you can go practically to our website to sign up for akeyless.io and to have your own identity, to enter that, and you'll be able to see that within one click of a new button, you'll see all different types of secrets at the same place. You're able to view the credentials, the static one, the rotated one, to configure dynamic ones, to issue certificates, even public certificates, to automate that, to have encryption as a service, to connect the system with your KMIP encryption methodology.
You'll be unifying awareness, the ability to display it and see it, and the ability to act.
Everything is within it, and I'll tell you more with regards to observability, but right now, already the multiple types of secrets are getting answered in a vaultless manner with a Akeyless approach, all of that all together. On top of that, there is a notion of governance and control, all right? And how would a certain enterprise understand what is it that they have? So within our platform, we have created a module around Universal Secrets Connector that allows our customers to basically look at their existing secrets repositories, right? Different types of secret management solutions of cloud providers, of the industry, open source solutions, etc., and to look at what they have today in order to understand whether they have rotated that, whether too many privileges have been taken, maybe some secrets that are not being used. So that allows this, what we call the first level of observability, or first level of governance, to basically first understand what is it that you have. Right. In future, you'll find Akeyless providing more and more of that, either by growing it organically or by partnering with a lot of other companies that are very much into, but to make it in a unified way anywhere.
Integrated.
Exactly, in an integrated approach in which a customer can basically enjoy that, to have all of that all together. One more word about unification. So what we have investigated in the realm of machine identity management, today there are 12 different categories in order to really secure machine identities. 12 different categories that are provided by 15 different tools and 75 different vendors. In order to truly secure those machine identities, think of a security division or platform engineering security, right, section. They need to have so many POCs, so many proof of concepts, so many vendors to test in order to be able to have them with those 12 different tools that they need to have in order to completely save and protect those. So I'm very happy to see that for the majority part of those tools, our platform is already providing an answer. And with time, you'll see more and more of us evolving to basically grow that organically without stitching any other solutions, rather than providing a unified solution that has built as such ground to top. What would be your take of several tips that you have for today's CISO in this complex and new environment of the modern life of security?
I mean, so first I'd say, look, you have a hard job. There's no doubt about it. The challenge is difficult, and it's getting more challenging. So as a guy who used to be a defender myself, the things I try to say to people are, number one, make sure you get a strong fundamental baseline knowledge of exactly what your configuration is. So many times as an attacker, what the network owner thought their configuration was versus what the reality was, that they were often very different. And attackers, we would exploit that to our advantage if we were trying to gain unauthorized access. So in addition to getting a good baseline of knowledge, secondly, reduce complexity. Think about how you can operate at scale. Simplify. And then finally, remember, at its heart, cybersecurity is the ability to apply, integrate, and maximize technology with motivated, well-trained, and well-prepared men and women. And you need both of those dimensions. It can't be just one. It's got to be both. Well, hey, we've had a great conversation today.
Yeah.
Anything in your mind that you'd like to close out with?
No, actually, I wanted to thank you, Mike. I wanted to thank you with coming over and having this great conversation. Looking forward for a next opportunity to do so. And that's it. That's it on my.
So for me, look, I just want to say thanks, both Oded, for you as an individual and the broader Akeyless team, but also for all of us out there who are trying to come to grips with the challenges around identity. And I love the fact that you are looking at a solution of vision in which you are tying together both the protection of secrets and machine identity, that you're trying to do it in an integrated way that is going to give us scale and speed. And that's something we need more.
Yeah.
Make it like simpler, not more complicated.
Yeah.
So well done.
Very proud to do so. The team, the entire company. And again, thank you, Mike, for today.
Thanks.
All right.
Always good.
All right.